Italy, Rome. I worked at the Brazilian embassy in Rome. Then I went to Chile, Santiago in South America, also at the Brazilian embassy. Then I went back to Brazil, to the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Brasilia, in our capital. And then I went to Geneva, to our mission to the United Nations in Geneva. As you know, Brazil is it's a big country, a huge country. I think we are the fifth biggest country in the world in terms of territory, with more than 8,100,000 square kilometers. We are located in South America. We occupy a good part of South America, more than 50%. People living in peace with different languages and cultures. So that's one of our assets, I think.
مشاهدينا في كل مكان، اهلا بيكم. احنا معاكم النهارده داخل سفاره جمهوريه البرازيل. لقائنا مع سعادة السفير باولينو نيتو، سفير جمهوريه البرازيل لدى جمهوريه مصر العربيه. سعادة السفير, thank you so much for having us for the next time.
It's a pleasure to be with you again. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, now I would like to talk about the history of relations between Egypt and Brazil. When did it started and what distinguished it?
It's a coincidence, a very good coincidence, that when I'm doing this interview, we are commemorating 100 years of diplomatic relations. So, 1924 to 2024. It's a rich relation that we have amongst Brazilians and Egyptians, between Brazil and Egypt. And we had already two presidential visits to Egypt during the Republican period in Brazil. President Lula came in 2003, and again in this year in 2024. And before that, we had an emperor in Brazil before the Republic. Emperor Dom Pedro II, the second, came to Egypt in the 1876, and that's why we have in my office here. Maybe we could also make some images of it, photos of the visit of our then Emperor of Brazil to Egypt in 1876.
That's a long period.
That's to say that Brazil and Egypt have very old relations, which obviously increased with independence of modern Egypt in 1922. From 24 on, we had official diplomatic relations, and we have since a long time embassies in our capitals, be it in Rio de Janeiro, be it in Brasilia, when we moved our capital to Brasilia, and we've been in Cairo for quite a long time.
That's really a long history. I would like to go back to the visit of the President of Brazil last February. I want to ask Your Excellency, what's the impact of this visit on the relations, of course?
It was a very successful visit, and it's not that I'm just saying that, but it's a consensus amongst different experts, and be it in Brazil, in Egypt, that it was a very important and successful visit. President Lula was very happy to be here. He had meetings with President Sisi. He stayed at a presidential palace as a guest here in Cairo. He went to pay a visit to the pyramids in Cairo. Both heads of state agreed to have a strategic partnership between the two countries. So I see that the opportunities of increasing even more the relation between Brazil and Egypt are open. President Sisi will pay a official visit to Brazil, also in the context of the G20, which presidency is being held by Brazil now. So President Lula invited President Sisi to go to Brazil for the G20 summit next November in Rio de Janeiro, and President Sisi accepted the invitation. And also we're planning a bilateral visit between the two presidents, so President Sisi could also pay a specific bilateral visit in Brazil before or after the G20 meeting. So that's very good news that we are having a intensification of our political relations. So that's part of the story. But it's also important we are doing the best we can to improve also our trade relations, our economic relations, and most important, the relations, as we say, people-to-people relations. And one of the ways of improving those relations is to have a non-stop flight from Egypt, from Cairo to Brazil, specifically to São Paulo, which is our biggest hub in Brazil, and also to try to facilitate the issue of visas for Egyptians going to Brazil and Brazilians coming to Egypt. In the end, maybe to exempt Brazilians and Egyptians from the need of having a visa to go to each country. So there are many things on our plate, let's say, and we are doing a hard job in trying to find best ways to improve our bilateral relations at large.
Can I ask in details about the volume of trade between the two countries? How much it is now?
Rough numbers, last year we had 2.8 billion US dollars, 2.8 billion US dollars in terms of bilateral trade, exports of Brazil to Egypt and exports of Egypt to Brazil. We export mainly food commodities to Egypt, and Egypt exports basically fertilizers to Brazil. So it's a kind of complementary trade relation. We produce food in Brazil, and for that we need fertilizers. We export to Egypt, and Egypt export to Brazil. But I think that we should also try to, in a way, to develop our trade and investment relations. I think that Brazilian companies should take the advantage of the geographical position of Egypt, of the conditions, economic and conditions that Egypt can offer, basically on the Suez economic zone, in order to have Brazilian companies producing here, creating jobs in Egypt, and also exporting to third countries. So that would be our major challenge now, try to have a plus in terms of our economic relations.
To have new investment here
That's
in
true.
Egypt.
Brazilian companies invest in Brazil. And for that, it's also important that Egyptians, the Egyptian companies, Egyptian business people go to Brazil and try to sell Egypt to Brazil, show what Egypt has to offer in terms of economic conditions, and also, which is very important, to attract Brazilian tourists to Brazil, which is a very important industry here, the tourist industry in Egypt. So I think there's much room for improvement in both directions.
That's very great. If I asked you, Alexander, about the other means of cooperation, such like the cultural cooperation between the two countries, can you tell us?
I mean,
more
cultural cooperation is very important, but let me also mention before cultural cooperation, technical cooperation, cooperation in science and technology between research institutes here in Egypt and Brazil. During the presidential visit to Egypt last February, the Minister of Science and Technology from Brazil and the Minister of Science and Technology from Egypt signed a memorandum of understanding in order to facilitate the exchange of researchers, of universities, studies. So that's a part of an important story that we need to develop. In terms
what
of
kind of research? Are we talking about the agricultural research?
Basically, yeah,
or
which
technology
is
only?
Agricultural research, which involves technology also. I mean, modern agriculture needs technology. So it's one of the demands, one of the most important demands of Egypt. There is also a agreement between our Agricultural Research Institute, we call EMBRAPA, and the Egyptian Agricultural Research in order to help both countries develop other agricultural cultures, and it's improving quite fast. So that's one of the results, outcomes of the presidential visit to Egypt.
Does it mean also there is a cooperation in the field of education and the student exchange?
Yeah, it's beginning, although obviously the Portuguese language and the Arabic language, it's a challenge for both countries. But it's also good that Brazilians could learn Arabic here in Egypt, and Egyptians could go to Brazil to learn Portuguese. So we're trying to see the ways of doing this in a very concrete way, and I hope we can attain some good results on that respect.
And what about the field of archaeology?
Archaeology, it's also a very important issue for Brazilians and Egyptians. Egypt, I mean, it's where archaeology is for obvious reasons. We had this year a Brazilian mission, archaeological mission here in Egypt. It's not the first time that they come to Egypt, and they come on an annual basis, and we are helping them, including through helping them with their stay here in Egypt, our embassy. So I think we can have more cooperation on that side. And also we had a sad thing that happened in Brazil 4 or 5 years ago, which was a huge problem in our national museum, who went on fire. So, and part of our collection was destroyed. So we have asked, including during the presidential visit, we asked our friends here in Egypt to lend some of your beautiful archaeological and artifacts to the inauguration of this museum, which will be, I think, in 2026. So that's part of us, also of our bilateral exchanges in terms of cultural things.
We cannot speak about Brazil, and we don't speak about the Brazilian football and the sports. Is there any kind of cooperation between Egypt and Brazil in this field, especially the sports field?
Specifically on football, I'm not aware of that, but my dream is to help bring the Brazilian national team to Egypt to play a game with Egypt. So we are working on that. It's not easy because there are many, let's say, private interests involved, but that would be a landmark if we could have a friendly match between Brazil and Egypt, and that will, in a way, consolidate our friendship, and especially for the common citizens of Egypt and Brazil, to have both teams playing together with your players like Salah, which is a phenomenon also in Brazil. He's known in Brazil, and the Brazilian players, which are very much well known here also.
Almost 1 year here in Egypt. So can I ask you about your favorite tourist destinations that you have been to, or the things that you aim to go to in the future?
Yeah, I've been here for nearly 1 year. I've been much involved in this period with the preparation of the presidential visit, but also as you know, we had an important group of Brazilians, Palestinian Brazilians who lived in Gaza, and we helped them to evacuate them from Gaza to the Gaza Strip to Egypt and then to Brazil. So that kept me busy for quite a long time. But now, from now on, I hope that I can visit different places in this beautiful country, be it in the north and the south and the Red Sea, North Coast, go to Alexandria, to Luxor and Aswan, and so I'm very keen on visiting all those places in Egypt with my family, my wife who lives with me here in Cairo. We love this country. We want to know it better and know the different beautiful places that we have here in Egypt.
You haven't been to the great new museum?
You have been there. It was an honor and a privilege. President Lula went to visit the new Egyptian museum, and it was a fantastic visit organized by the Egyptian authorities. President Lula was escorted by former Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, El-Nani, who accompanied President Lula and his spouse to visit this fantastic new place that you have here in Egypt.
The Egyptian cuisine, did your Excellency try the Egyptian cuisine, and what is your favorite dish?
You know, we have an Egyptian chef in our official residence, so that's good to know. Yeah, he's very good. He's very good, I must say. So I like very much falafel. I like kohari. I like this mixture of vegetables, rice, and pasta and noodles. So even pigeon I like very much here. I was not used to eating pigeon, but it's a national plate here in Egypt. So I like it very much, including the local wine, which is very good also. I enjoy it very much. So it's a very tasty food, and even the street food I've adventured to taste it. It's very good.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for having us for the next time, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
It was my pleasure. It was an honor for me to talk to you, to the Egyptian public television, and I must say that I'm very happy to be here in Egypt. For me, it is an honor to be the Brazilian ambassador to Egypt during this period. Thank you very much.
مشاهدينا في كل مكان، وبكده انتهى لقائنا مع سعادة السفير باولينو نيتو، سفير جمهورية البرازيل لدى جمهورية مصر العربية. بشكركم جدا لحسن متابعتكم لينا، وإلى اللقاء.